Going back to our top story today, TikTok. As we said before, an overwhelming number of lawmakers voted to ban it, and they did so because they're worried about national security issues. Joining us now is a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee to explain that vote, Democratic Senator from New York, Kristen Gillibrand. Thank you, Senator, for being here. Explain from your perspective, having seen intelligence on this, why this is a national security issue, the subject of TikTok. And I'm curious about why you believe it is, because yesterday I had Jim Himes on. I know he's in the minority, but, you know, he's a member of the Gang of Eight, and he said that this wasn't an intelligence concern for him, that the data is getting mopped up by all sorts of apps.
Well, my concern is this. First, TikTok is an app that lots of people use, and they enjoy it and they love it. A lot of people get their news from it. A lot of people use it daily, and it's fun. My young teenagers, kids, they love it. So the truth is that it's infrastructure. And when a foreign adversary owns your infrastructure, it means they can use it when they see fit, and they can use it in a way to harm the United States. I'll give you an example. There was a lot of discussion about Huawei building people's telecommunications systems. Well, if you own all the telecommunications systems in a country or in a community or in a state or in a city, and you want to spy on those telecommunications and you want to take them down during a national emergency, you have that ability. TikTok's not that different. If we were at war over the issue of Taiwan and China wanted to spread misinformation across the United States about the nature of that conflict or what was at risk, or, God forbid, emergency preparedness messaging, it could be devastating. And for a lot of young people, they get a lot of their news from TikTok alone. So really giving that amount of power to someone who is not typically our friend and could well become an adversary in the future is deeply unwise.
Yeah, I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the manipulation factor here and how the algorithm could be, in theory at least, tweaked to change public opinion.
So, for example, you know, we've had the war in Ukraine, we've had the war in Gaza. And if you ask a 16-year-old, how much content do you see about the war in Gaza? They'll say, I see something every day. And you say, do you see anything about Ukraine? No, not really. Do you see anything about Yemen? No. Do you see anything about Somalia? No. Do you know anything about Somalia? No. Because that content is something that Russia, for example, would love the United States to focus only on the war in Gaza and not focus on the war in Ukraine. As an ally, China is an ally of Russia. They can manipulate that algorithm to only show young people horrific content of the war in Gaza, to have them absolutely focused, steadfast on that one conflict worldwide. So that protests on every college campus. So there is no discussion of the death and destruction in Ukraine because that is what Russia wants. That is a huge problem for us. And the data shows content on TikTok with regard to Gaza being pro-Gazan and pro-Palestinian was something like 95%. So there's a reason why they're not getting content on any other conflict worldwide or any other tragedy or horrific content, because many people, Chinese, Russia, would like us focused on that conflict alone. It's just one example.
I want to ask you about the other topic that President Biden, or a topic that President Biden made news on. I'm going to read it for time's sake. He said, no one should be discriminated against based on their sex. And in order for the amendment, the Equal Rights Amendment, to be ratified, requires 3/4 of the states to ratify that benchmark. That benchmark was passed when Virginia ratified the ERA a few years ago. Today, I affirm the Equal Rights Amendment to have cleared all the necessary hurdles to be added to the U.S. Constitution. He says the Equal Rights Amendment is the law of the land now. This is making sure that, you know, you and I, women, are equal to men under the law, under the Constitution. Is it now constitutional? I mean, is this now something that is in our Constitution because the president said it last night?
It is. And the truth is that when the 38th state to ratify, Virginia, did so in 2020, it should have been noticed to the American people that it is part of the Constitution. But President Trump was president, and so he created a legal fiction that it took too long to get done. It's not true. There's no timeline requirements in Article 5 of the Constitution. There's no requirement that things have to be done in a timely or short way. And the 7-year deadline that was set in a preamble is not constitutionally operative. It's not relevant. And so what we needed all this time was the fact that this has been accomplished to be published, to be told to the states to start enforcing this law. Normally, the archivist does that, but the last 2 archivists refused to do their jobs and did not do so. So President Biden decided, I'm going to, as the commander-in-chief, as the highest legal authority in this administration, will say so that the states can start enforcing this law. And so by his statement today, he essentially published and gave notice to states that this is the law of the land. You need to look through all your laws to make sure you have nothing that undermines it, and it now gives a right of action to people across the United States who have been discriminated against on the basis of their gender, a right to sue. And that might include an equal pay lawsuit. It might include discrimination on a college campus about sports. It might include the parents who took a 10-year-old daughter across state lines and were denied their right to travel because of an abortion law.